About a half an hour before our podcast, I was actually on Facebook, and I saw a comment from someone because there's something up on Facebook, and it touches my heart and almost brings tears to my heart. And it touches my heart in a way where it says, children in Gaza have no water to bathe. In Gaza, there's no water to bathe children. And then there's a space and it says, yeah, but in Israel, in Kibbutz Be'eri, there are no children to bathe. That's powerful stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the It Stands Written podcast. Today we have a special edition. We're going over Israel and the geopolitical side. My name is Braden. I'm joined here with Justin, Elijah, and two other guests today. We have Ryan, who's one of our brothers from church, and we also have a special guest today. Jack, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners.
Thanks so much. Great to be with you. I'm messianic Rabbi Jack Zimmerman. That means I'm a Jewish believer in Jesus or Yeshua, and I also serve as the staff evangelist for Jewish Voice Ministries International here in Phoenix. Romans 1:16, Paul says, let's bring the gospel to the Jews and the nations. A lot of us know how to do it to the nations. A lot of us are clueless on how to do it for the Jews. And that's where we're at.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we love to have you on here. We're going to go into some things that are happening just around the world, kick some questions over to you. Justin, I'll kind of hand over to you, get the first questions going.
Yeah, well, and this is a special treat for me because, Jack, we have been in the very land we were talking about together, leading a tour in Israel, teaching God's word side by side in the place where it actually happened, and in the place not only where what's happening geopolitically has happened, but where great future God's plan for the nation of Israel and the culmination of really the end of the world and the return of Christ in that spot. So many prophecies aimed at the final end and coming of Jesus' great coronation on earth. But you and I have been in that place, and we've stood there and we've prayed there, and with hope and expectation, we've guided other people to set their affection on things to come. And having you here as a believer, having you here as a Jewish rabbi who trusts in Christ, having you here who's solid theologically and doctrinally, but also understands better than any of us do the nature of the geopolitical situation that's happening there. We've talked as a church from a theological perspective all the way from Genesis 3 to Revelation 19 and everything in between with regard to why we're seeing from a theological perspective what's happening, God's promises that his people would have a land, God's definite future for the nation of Israel, the Bible's eschatology as it relates to the coming of Christ, and the great ingathering of souls and the great proclamation that the Jewish people will declare. We want to know how to understand what we're seeing over there. What is Hamas? What is happening in Gaza? Why is Lebanon engaged, and what's Syria doing and its relationship to Iran? There's a lot of very, very complex geopolitical things that are happening, and our country is coming to the defense of Israel. But really, we just need from a pastor whose heart we can trust, who's grounded in the scripture, an understanding of how to just interpret what we're seeing, because there's so many conversations online. There's so many flammable conversations, even within our Congress, so many people divided, so many people unclear, so many people accusing Israel of the very hypocrisy that they're striking out, against Hezbollah and Hamas, et cetera. So we just need to pull the string on your back and for us to come into your mind and your world and help us to frame that biblically so that we know as Christians how to think, and then ultimately how to respond.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you starting off with that type of question, because many Christians are in the midst of a dichotomy right now. A dichotomy because on the one hand, we know biblically, okay, so Genesis 12 says, bless Israel. Psalm 122:6 says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Isaiah 40 says, comfort, comfort Israel, my people. But then on the other end, geopolitically, we're hearing all of this stuff coming through, not only online, but news broadcasts. Israel is the aggressor, and if you're a true lover of Jesus, Jesus, of course, came for the poor and the oppressed. So therefore, even biblically, supposedly, that you're aligning with Israel, now you've got the other string or the other side where you've got to align with the Palestinians. And I think there's a tension there where many Christians are saying, I don't know what to do. How can I align with the Bible, yet at the same time watch and just look at innocent Palestinians being killed, and how do I negotiate both? And it's a great question to ask. And the one ingredient that people are missing that would really take the confusion out of this is history. What is the history of this? Because people don't know.
Yeah.
They say, okay, well, this goes back to October 7th. No, let's go back farther. Okay, it goes back to the Yom Kippur War of 1973. Farther back. Okay, when Israel became a state in 1948. Yeah, you're getting warmer, but you got about 2,000 more years to go. And people don't know the root of this. And what they're hearing is they're hearing claims made by the media, claims by senators and congressmen, which in and of itself are contradictory, and they don't know what to believe. And so let's set the record straight. Plus, let me throw something else in there. In this wonderful environment and society that we live in today, known as moral relativism, then what do you do with people who say, okay, so now that you've given me the facts, guess what? I don't like the facts. They're not in my reality, so the facts aren't going to change me anyway. So you've got all of these things coming together, and none of it makes any sense.
Yeah.
So let me make sense from here. I think one place to start, and one of the things that we've been hearing, and everybody else, occupier. Israel is the occupier of Palestinian land, and Hamas is, look, they're really not a terrorist group. They're freedom fighters. They're trying to do the same thing that we did with the British prior to the Civil War. Get out of my country. It's my land. Okay, let's set a couple of things into order. And every time somebody says Israel is occupying Palestinian land, the Palestinians are the original settlers or the original owners of this land, my question is, what do you base that conclusion on? Do you base that conclusion on because that's what Al Jazeera said? Do you base it because that's what CNN said? Or because you yourself actually took the time to do the research and you said, wait a minute, when Israel was under Roman oppression, way back, and we're talking even during Jesus' time, and we know that from opening up our New Testament. When Israel was under Roman oppression, shortly after that was done at the end of Rome's rule over Jerusalem, what did Rome do? Rome basically said, here's what we're going to do. Because we hate you Jews so much, as a slap in the face and an insult to you, we are going to name your land, not Canaan, but we are going to name it Palestina. And we're going to name it Palestina after your arch enemies, those who you had the most difficult time eradicating out of your land, the Philistines. So here's a base, guys. We've got history, okay? Awesome. We've got fact. Now, for those who are moral relativists and say, you know, Rabbi Jack, that's nice, but I'm still a tree. God bless you. I'm talking anyway. So we've got this land called Palestina, which basically was named after the Philistines, okay? Now, I could go through so much history and let me, kind of do this in an abbreviated form. Rome got out. We had the Byzantines. We had the Persians. The Muslims came in. They were kicked out by the Crusades. The Muslims came back in. Then the Ottoman Turks. This particular stretch of land that we know as Israel and part of the Middle East and Jordan and Syria over the past 2,000 years has been in so many different hands. Fast forward to 1918. And 1918 is a great place to start. So here's what you've got. You've got Palestina, or Palestine, which it was called at that time.
So wait, just to clarify, you said that the Romans did give it to the Israelites, but they named it in such a way to insult them.
Close. It always belonged to the Israelites in accordance, for example, with Genesis 15:18. And that's where God made a covenant with Abram. And he said, Abraham, I'm going to give this land to your descendants. And this land goes from the great river of Egypt, the Nile, all the way to the Euphrates River in Iraq. So it's not so much as Rome saying, okay, this has been ours all the time. It never was Rome's land. We're going to give it to you, you Israelites, if you will, or your Jews. It's Rome saying, okay, we're out of here. Finally, do what you want.
Okay.
Fast forward to 1918. We're talking the end of World War I. And in that land where the Ottoman Turks are, Great Britain takes an interest and they say, hey, we want that land. And people are scratching their heads saying, why would Great Britain, why would the monarchy thousands of miles away want this land in the middle of the desert? Because under all that sand, there was oil. So Great Britain said, we're going to kick the Ottoman Turks out. We're going to have authority over the land, but we can't kick the Ottoman Turks out alone. We need help. So we know that the Jews feel that they need a national homeland of their own. We know the Arabs want a national homeland of their own. Let's get the Jews and the Arabs both to help us kick out the Ottoman Turks. And when they do and when we do, we'll give each one of them a piece.
Wow.
So that's exactly what happened.
That's so insightful.
Britain kicks out the Ottoman Turks. Now Britain has to pay up. Britain says to the Jews, they say, hey, you see this narrow strip of land? It's got the Jordan River bordering on the east and the Mediterranean Sea on the west. It's got Lebanon to the north, Egypt to the south. If you guys want that land, we'll give that to you. And we said, yeah, we'll take it. Britain said to the Arabs, now what we're going to do is we're going to give you guys Jordan, and we're going to give you under the French mandate, which is known as Syria, and we'll give you that land. So Britain gives land to both sides, says to the Jews, are you happy? We're like, we're happy. Says to the Arabs, are you happy? The Arabs are like, no, we're not. Britain says, well, wait a minute. You know, look at a map. We gave you 3 times as much land as we gave to the Jews. How come you're not 3 times as happy? They said, because we believe that according to Allah and our Quran, that land belongs to us, and we're not going to be happy until we get it back, because if we don't get it back, Allah's going to be really upset with us. And so that's what you've got. You've got, obviously, this distinction of 2 different books, and there was a time, believe it or not, and a lot of folks don't know this, when the world of Islam recognized, it's in one of their earlier books, where the world of Islam said, you know, God brought the Jews out of Egypt and gave them that land today that we know as Israel. Islam admits this. But after a time when people didn't want to listen to Muhammad anymore because he said, I'm speaking the Bible, and they're like, yeah, you were doing really great until you got to Genesis 22 and said it was Ishmael instead of Isaac. Sorry, thanks for playing. All of a sudden, the verses in the Quran changed. And then when that happened, people said, okay, but there's a contradiction here. And they settled it from Surah 2106, where they said, look, if Allah has said something in one verse, and then he says something different in a later verse, it's only because Allah has decided to change the verse. Do you not know that Allah has the power to do all these things? And my feeling is, okay, yeah, but if Allah has the power to do anything and he's all-knowing, how come Allah didn't know enough to get the verse right in the first time?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
But so you've got now these 2 lands next to each other, the earliest form of a 2-state solution. Okay, guys, we had it. Everybody's saying there will be peace if there's a 2-state solution. We already tried that. It didn't work. You try another 2-state solution, you're going to go back to 1920, where the Arabs basically said, look, we got Jordan, we got Syria. That little sliver of land you gave to the Jews, sorry, we want that too. And back then, they incited riots. And back then, they were suicide bombers. And back then, they were saying that they were the original settlers of that land. Did they have any evidence? Did they have any archaeological finds? A coin? No, nothing. Fast forward now to 1948. Israel becomes her own sovereign state. Drives the Arabs crazy because they said, now you're declaring it's your land. We really got to get back from you. Next day, here's what happened. A lot of people don't know this. At that time, Arabs and Jews, then as now, were living in the land of Israel side by side. They were getting along great. Friends, relatives, families. They were all like family. Arab radio broadcasters got on the radio and broadcast a message in Arabic to the Arabs living in Israel. Said, oh, our Arab brothers and sisters, tomorrow we will liberate Israel. We will liberate Palestine. It will be ours. This is a dream we've had that Allah is going to give us the land. But we need you who are living in Israel, you Palestinians, you Arabs, they weren't Palestinians then, to leave your homes, run to the borders, and fight with us.
The citizens.
Yeah. And then when we liberate this area, you will come in, and not only will you go back into the homes that you had, but you will also acquire the property of your Israeli neighbor. At the same time, when Israel got word, they said, look, when they got on the radio, Israeli radio broadcasters, and they broadcast a message in Arabic to these same Arabs who were living with them side by side. They said, look, you've been living here. We've been living together in peace as friends and family. Don't run to the borders and fight against us. We will send our Jewish sons and daughters to fight for you. We consider you our own, because Leviticus 19:34, I believe it's a citation, says, treat the foreigner as your native born. We did that in 1948. So what happened? The very next day, tens of thousands of Arabs who were living side by side in Israel with the Jews ran to the borders to fight against Israel. And guys, we all know what happens. You can't deny history. Israel defeated every single one of those who launched an aggressive attack on her. And when that happened, the Arabs who had left their homes in Israel basically said, okay, we lost. It was entertainment for a day or two. And, come on, like going to a ball game. Let's just go back and cross the border back into Israel and go to their homes. Problem. Because now they're the enemy.
Right.
And now when they want to go back in, what do you expect Israel to do? Israel says, look, you can't come back in. You were bent on our destruction.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Arabs said, well, where should we go? And we basically said, look, that's not our problem. But if you want our advice, why don't you go knock on Syria's door? Or why don't you go knock on Lebanon's door? Or why don't you go knock on Egypt or Iraq or Iran's door? You were willing to give your life to help their cause. Surely they'd be willing to give you a 300 square foot place to live. And every time they went to one of those countries to get in, each and every one of those countries said, no, we don't want you.
Wow.
Our intent was never to bring you in. Our intent was for you to colonize this new land. But since that didn't happen, hey, sorry, tough luck.
You're on your own.
You're on your own. So you have these tens of thousands of Arabs now, people without a country, their own fault, and the myth, because let's dispel the myth, because there's just so much nonsense and misinformation out there. The myth was that, well, these people had no place to go because Israel kicked them out. Oh, please, what a load of garbage. Look, even the former Syrian Prime Minister al-Azam, who was the Prime Minister of Syria at the time, wrote in his memoirs in 1973. Here's what he wrote. Here's what he said. He said, the Arab problem was not caused by Israel. Our own Arab leaders told those Arabs to get out of the country. And the fact that we are displaced, it's our fault. Israel had nothing to do with it. So their own side is basically saying, it's us. We're the bad guy. So how come the world believes different? Here's the answer to that question. The world believes different because of something called, and we discussed this before the podcast, liberation theology. The idea that, well, because Jesus came for the poor and oppressed, and we got to root for the underdog, and look at these people, they don't have a country. We don't care why they don't have a country. It doesn't matter if that's their fault or not. We got to side with them. And that nonsense has been going on ever since. And so you have these people without a country who basically are hanging around in refugee camps for years, people without a country, not Israel's fault, until one among them arose in the early 1960s. The guy's name was Yasser Arafat. You got a whole lot of people who are followers. Somebody's got to be a leader. And he rises up and he says, hey, I got this great idea. Why don't we call ourselves, let's see, what's the land called? Palestine. Okay, and named after the Philistines. Yeah, we're not related to them, but who cares? Let's call ourselves Palestinians. And that way, we could say, because the land matches our name, we were the original settlers. Do we have any archaeological evidence? No. Does that matter? No. We won't make it matter, because we will then say that we are the Palestinians, we are the original owners. We'll come up with the lie that Israel is occupying us, and we'll throw a little violence in just for good measure. And the whole world will believe the nonsense, and the whole world has been believing it ever since.
One thing I've noticed, and I certainly don't ascribe to this idea of how we decide who owns land, but the popular thing these days is whoever has the oldest claim, they're the indigenous ones.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and they try applying that with Palestinians, but the thing is that technically the true indigenous ones would technically be Canaanites.
Yeah.
But there haven't been any Canaanite groups since the Carthaginians died out. And now that the Carthaginians are gone, the oldest claim defaults back to the Israelis. Without ever touching a spiritual book or anything at all, you can just pull like artifacts out of the ground. And it's obvious that's the case. The last of the Canaanites were the Phoenicians and their Carthaginian colony.
Yep.
Phoenicia fell. Carthage stayed, lived on, actually worshiping the same, Baal and all of them as well, the same group. And then the Carthaginians died out. And then there's even if you ascribe to that whole idea that, the oldest group in the land is the ones who own it, that would still be Israel at this point.
Yes. And you know what? I'm so glad you brought that up. And you know who knows it? The Arabs know it.
Yeah.
The Arabs know it, because after Yasser Arafat came to power as their leader, he formed an organization called the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization. And it was their goal to finally accomplish what they weren't able to do in 1948 or even in 1967 during the Six-Day War. They said, we're going to annihilate Israel. And so what a lot of people don't know, and the reason I say is they know it themselves, in 1977, a PLO executive committee member, so he's on the board with Yasser Arafat, his name was Zahir Hussein. Zahir Hussein does the unthinkable, but I'm glad that he did. He does an interview with the Dutch newspaper Trouw. And the reporter at the newspaper says, Mr. Hussein, I've got to ask you this question. Where did you people come from? Mm-hmm. Well, I've never heard, before 1967, we never heard of you. It's like, one day there was a Jordanian flag, and you guys took the star off and said, that's a Palestinian flag. We've never seen that before. Aren't you guys really Jordanian? Where is this term coming from? You're saying you're from ancient of times. 1967 is not exactly BC. What's going on? And here's the answer he gave. And it's amazing. It's a true answer. He said, I tell you this, the Palestinian people does not exist. This is a supposed Palestinian saying this. I'll say it again. Guys, this is not me. Look, huge. I'm a Jew. You want to call me biased? Fine. I'm quoting a Palestinian. Zahir Hussein, 1977, Dutch newspaper Trouw says, the Palestinian people does not exist. Wow. He said, we only posit the existence of the Palestinian people because of our struggle to liberate Israel and for no other reason. So since 1977, if not before, you have had, let's call them the other team, just for diplomatic reasons here, the other team saying, don't you understand? We lied to you. We made it up. We've admitted to you that we've made the whole thing up. We don't belong here, and yet you guys are still too stupid to believe it.
Wow.
So that's what you've got.
Super clear.
Yeah. And, from that, the lie continues today. And what we're seeing today is I guess, I don't want to use the term, there's a different term than promulgated. It's promoted by three prongs, if you will. Israel is the occupier. Israel is engaging in apartheid. Israel is building walls and checkpoints against Palestinians, putting Palestinians in. And guys, I got to be honest with you. If I hear somebody say that, use the term open air prison again, because I've heard it 25 times in the past 2 weeks, my head is going to explode. But these are the objections that we need to answer. Part of the problem is there haven't been enough people from the biblical side who know how to answer. I'm not scolding anybody. I'm not berating. I'm just saying we've never been given the information. We've never been given the tools. Thank God now we are. Let's talk about the idea of quote unquote occupation. Again, we know, as you pointed out, the Jewish people, Israel's claim to the land. Okay. We know that the Arabs, basically, who are claiming to be Palestinian, they're from Jordan. They're from Egypt. Yasser Arafat was an Egyptian. So the claim of occupation, forget it, right out the window. That doesn't hold geopolitically and biblically. What about the claim that Israel is engaging in apartheid? Because that's another one.
It's a big one.
It is a big one. And we're not only hearing this from some news networks and from the squad, but my God, it was not in the too distant past that I was watching a press conference where the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa is holding a press conference in Cape Town, South Africa, and he gets up and he says, we in South Africa have solidarity with the Palestinians, not with the apartheid rule of Israel. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Wait, time out.
Well, of course they do. Well, they're both killing civilians.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the irony. If there's anyone who should know what apartheid is,
right,
it's Cyril Ramaphosa. I mean, my God, for years, your country was the poster child for apartheid. Come on.
Right.
And you're trying to ascribe moral equivalency to a country that basically did what we did to blacks in the 30s and 40s and say that Israel is doing the same thing? Are you out of your mind? Because look, here's the deal, and here's something else that people don't know. If we're truly discriminating against, quote unquote, the Palestinians today, here's a couple of facts. Fact, 1 out of every 5 citizens of Israel is an Arab, Muslim / Palestinian. 1 out of every 5. They enjoy the same rights as Israeli citizens do. They've got the right to vote. They've got freedom of the press. They've got, freedom, obviously, of expression. My God, they serve in government positions. Israel's parliament, or Knesset, has 120 members. 10 of them are Arab Muslim Palestinian. Israel, one of Israel's Supreme Court justices, is a Palestinian.
Wow.
During the interim government before Netanyahu came back in as prime minister, you had then Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. And, you know, his government lasted, what, like 5-10 minutes. But his housing minister was Mansour Abbas, a Palestinian. Some years ago, Harvard University did a study, and they said, let's do a survey. Let's survey Palestinians who live in Israel. Let's go for that 20%, and ask them how many of them would rather live in Israel or in one of their own, you know, Arab states, ethnic-wise. The results of Harvard University's poll, where they found that 80% of the Palestinians living in Israel that they surveyed said, we'd rather live in Israel, not only than one of our Arab states, we don't want that, but than any other country.
Wow.
And there's another organization, a Palestinian organization, got wind of this, and they said, okay, we don't believe the American side. We're going to do our own survey. So we're going to go out and ask Palestinians as well to give us the real answer. Tell us you want to go in one of those Arab countries. So the Palestinian organization did it, and they still found out that more than half of the Palestinians they spoke to said, yeah, we'd rather live in Israel. We love it in here. We've got all these freedoms. We're going to be oppressed in our Arab countries. So for those who keep accusing Israel of apartheid, and they never explain why they do it, my question to them is, if Israel is engaging in apartheid, and they're discriminating so badly against Palestinians, then how come 80% of Palestinians that Harvard interviewed and more than half of the Palestinian interviews that your own team interviewed said that they want to stay? If you were being discriminated against, would you want to stay and talk passionately about it? I don't think so. Guys, we've got to do our research. We can't believe the nonsense anymore. You know, the third prong, and I not only had somebody referring to themselves as a Christian, but I had a conversation not too long ago, an email conversation with a pastor in Canada. And we're talking by email, and he said, tell me about yourself. I said, hey, I'm a Jewish believer in Christ. He said, that's great. I love that. He said, tell me something else. I said, well, I believe we should support and bless Israel. He said, yeah, that's where you lose me. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. This is a pastor. This is going to be a fun conversation.
Right.
So I'm saying, okay, well, what's your beef with Israel?
Right.
And one of the things he said, it was the first thing he said, well, Israel, you know, it's because the walls and the checkpoints and the fences that Israel puts up to keep Palestinians out. And I wrote back to him and I said, okay, so pastor, explain something to me. I said, have you ever been to Israel? He said, no. I said, do you know who lives in Israel aside from Jews? He said, no. I said, Palestinians. 20%, 1 out of every 5 citizens in Israel is a Palestinian. So apparently Israel must have spent all that money putting up walls and checkpoints and fences. It didn't do a really good job now, did it? But Israel doesn't want them out. Israel put the walls and the checkpoints up, what, to keep Palestinians out? No, come on, we're letting them in. They represent 20% of the population. We don't want to keep the Palestinians out. We want to keep the terrorists out.
Right. That's the reason you have a front door in your house.
Thank you.
You let certain people in and you keep certain people out.
Exactly. I said, look, each and every single day, 50,000 Palestinians, at that time, whether it was from, let's say, quote unquote, Judea, Samaria, or even Gaza, go in and out of Israel every day. That's 350,000 a week. Number one, how are we keeping Palestinians out? I said, number two, let me give you some facts and statistics. Before the wall was up, I said, Pastor, come on, you know this. You had these terrorists coming in every day, blowing up innocent Israelis on Egged buses in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, going into cafes and pizzerias in places like Tel Aviv and Nahariya, and spraying bullets at everyone and killing them. And then they go right back over to places like Jenin and Khan Yunis. I said, since the walls and the checkpoints have gone up, fewer Israelis, and again, Palestinians are citizens too, fewer Israelis, but fewer of your people have been killed, the Palestinians. I said, so Pastor, what do you want? What do you want to do? What's your solution? Are you upset that the checkpoints are up there? So tell you what, Pastor, let's do this. Why don't we tell Israel to take the walls and the checkpoints and the fences back down, and that way the terrorists can come back in again and the death rate can go back up? Is that what you want? And I never heard from him again.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I found that newspaper because I wanted to look it up and add it to our podcast description if someone else wants to see it, but the Dutch newspaper that you referenced earlier, it's the Sentinel from May 1977.
Yep.
It came, and it says here, it came from Zuhar Mohsin. Is that how you say that?
Here, Hussein, yeah.
Leader of the Syrian-sponsored Palestinian units and head of the military department of the Palestine Liberation Organization. So he's head of the Palestine Liberation Organization. And in an interview with the Dutch newspaper, he said, there are no differences between Jordanians, Palestinians, Syrians, and Lebanese. We are all one people. It is for political reasons only that we carefully emphasize our Palestinian identity. For it is in the national interest of the Arabs to encourage the existence of Palestinians against Zionism. Yes, the existence of a separate Palestinian identity is there only for tactical reasons.
There you go. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you know, look, I mean, and thank you for bringing that up, because what are we seeing today? I mean, guys, we're living in this postmodern world today, and it's only been in the past 10 years where you are depending upon who you identify with. We think, wow, we've never seen that before. Hello, 1977.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, so Jack, then go back to the days of Yasser Arafat and when they established that illegitimate people group essentially in that place. Take us historically from there to today. How did we end up with Gaza? How did we end up with Hezbollah, Hamas? Like fill in some of those gaps that exist since that time where Arafat set up that people group.
You bet. You bet. Arafat really invigorated the Arab cause to again try to liberate Israel. And that's why those nations that were unsuccessful in doing so in 1948 in the War of Independence said, you know, we've had 19 years to get our act together. Let's do it again. June the 4th through June the 10th of 1967, the Six-Day War. Once again, a surprise attack. Nations coming in. Israel was slightly caught off guard for a day or two, you know, stumbling back and forth. But then Israel once again defeated each and every one of those nations. Fast forward, if you will, to the Yom Kippur War of 1973. The Arabs tried again and couldn't do it. In the midst of this, though, guys.
They tried what? What did they try?
Another surprise attack on Israel. They said, let's attack Israel on the Day of Atonement, the holiest day of the year in the Jewish religion, because even the soldiers will be in the synagogues praying. They won't be out on the fields and the hills. They're not defending the country.
Right.
And to a certain extent, we had that just a couple of weeks ago.
That's exactly right. It's on the Shabbat.
Right. More than just coincidence, guys, that October the 7th, you know, a couple of weeks back when Hamas came in, we had our guard down, is the 50th anniversary of Yom Kippur when we had our guard down and they did it to us in 1973.
It was the actual 50th anniversary right there.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. But then at that point, we fast forward now, and I'm skipping over a lot, but that's okay. We're still connecting the dots.
Yeah.
To 2005, and a man named Ariel Sharon is the prime minister of Israel. All this time, you've still got the suicide bombers coming in, blowing everybody up, taking innocent Israelis. Pressure from his own cabinet and the rest of parliament basically says, look, Mr. Prime Minister, we have an idea. If you would just give them a little bit of land, we would have peace. Unfortunately, I think some of those who were making that claim weren't alive in 1947, because in 1947, the United Nations basically said, Israel, look, these Arabs are going to keep attacking you. So give away some of your land to them and everything will be great, because land for peace always works. And we gave them the land then in 1947 and it didn't work. But fast forward to 2005, different generation, different people saying, come on, land for peace. Let's try it. Let's try this two-state solution that George Bush and Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton, who were the leaders at that time and before, the echoes of their voices are saying it'll work. Newsflash. You don't get the bully to go away if you keep giving him your lunch money.
Right.
So it's 2005, and you've got all of these Israelis living in the Gaza Strip, our land acquired in a defensive war in the Six-Day War of 1967, when the Arabs launched a surprise attack against us, tried to take away our land, and obviously they were defeated. So Ariel Sharon told those Israelis living in the Gaza Strip, said, look, need you all out. They're like, out of what? Said, out of your homes, out of this land. We're going to give it to those who identify as Palestinians, and because that's the only way we're going to have peace. Unless y'all want to get blown up every single day on a bus or in a pizza parlor or in a coffee cafe. They said, okay, fine. And so in 2005, the Israelis who were living in the Gaza Strip got out. We have a word for that, a German word. It's called Judenrein, cleansing, a freeing of the Jews, getting the Jews out, totally cleansing them from an area. So now Ariel Sharon says to the Arab leaders, here's the Gaza Strip. It's all yours. Take it as a start to a new state. And as a further peace offering, or as a further olive branch, we're going to give you a business in there to start you guys up. Because one of the ways that our Jewish people were making money is we had greenhouses and plants and vegetables and fruits.
Right.
And we got the greenhouses up for you. We got the vegetables. We got the fruits. We got the irrigation hoses. Just turn the water on, instant money for you. So not only are we giving you the land, but we're giving you an income to give you an edge in getting started. Palestinians come into the land. 2 days later, they destroy the greenhouses, cut up the irrigation hoses.
Wow.
Right. And when people basically said, okay, what are you doing while you're doing that? Here's what they said. We're doing that because we don't want anything from those Jews.
Wow.
We're going to be fine on our own. And we don't need greenhouses taking up the land over here because we need land to set up rocket launchers and shoot rockets against them, because now that we're right on the border, we got a bullseye shot to annihilate them all.
Yeah, we don't want anything from those Jews, except the land. Don't take that back.
Right.
But
Great point. And that's what you've got going on ever since. Look, there was a Hamas war in 2014. People forget this is not the first time. And every time I hear somebody saying, I heard it again, two-state solution. We're working toward a two-state solution. Who was it? A congresswoman from New Jersey. She represents the area of Princeton, Trenton. She should know better. But she said the other day, she said, what we really need to do is we need to push for a two-state solution, and that's the only way there's going to be peace. And I'm like, lady, take the blinders off.
Right.
Because in Hamas's own charter, here's what they say. Any peaceful solution to the Palestinian problem or to the Zionist problem, because that's what they call us, Zionist. It's a term basically when you call I am a Jew, but I'm also a Zionist, by the way. It's come to be a derogatory term, but the term Zionist means I'm a Jew who, like everyone else, has the desire and the fervor for my people to have their own homeland. Just like any people deserve their own homeland.
Sure.
But they said any peaceful solutions proposed to the Zionist problem will be immediately rejected. You don't understand us. We want annihilation. That is the only solution. You want to solve this problem with Hamas? Here's what Hamas says. Here's how we solve the problem. You guys die so we can come in and everything will be fine.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So no starter.
No way.
No.
Isn't it true, Jack, that Israel is also supplying water and electricity even to those places as well, just giving them, which then after this happened, that was cut off? Like, what are some of the, like, they've been supplying all of these gracious ways to say, we give you so many reasons to be not violent to us. We're providing for you. We're being kind to you. Isn't that also part of this as well?
It is. Water, electricity. Look, there is a crossing in a section of the Gaza Strip called Beit Hanun. And for years, there has been a border crossing from Beit Hanun into Israel for trucks only. And every single day, 7 days a week, you would see trucks coming back and forth from Israel, making sure that Gaza has the necessary supplies that it needs. And so people say, well, Israel, you guys are terrible. You cut off, all the water and the electricities and the gas and the supplies. Isn't that awfully cruel of you? Time out.
Right.
Time out. First of all, Israel doesn't need to supply any of those. Well, the people, they're poor. They can't survive on their own. Oh, come on. Look, if you got 6,000 rockets to launch in a 4-day period, I'm sorry, you ain't poor.
Right.
You got the money. Your government, Hamas, is just putting it to the wrong place.
That's right.
So let's stop the nonsense by pointing to Israel and say Israel is the bad guy because Israel is oppressing Palestinians because they don't have anything. How about you look to your own Hamas government and ask them, why are you guys spending money on rockets when we need diesel fuel? Why are you guys spending money on rockets when we need medicine in hospitals, when we need textbooks in schools? And here's what they also should be asking Hamas. hey, Hamas, I'm a Palestinian citizen. I don't have any diesel fuel, but you guys got 1 million liters of diesel fuel stored up in your headquarters that you can use anytime you want.
Right.
How come?
Right.
And the greater question is, why isn't anybody asking?
It's a little bit like a gambling addict who's spending all their money on the big thing that they hope will one day come crashing in, but they're losing their home, they're losing their car, they're impoverishing their families, they're putting them out, all because one day I'll get my big win. And it's a gamble that they're losing.
They are losing, but I'll tell you something. Israel, up until recently, has been losing something too. Israel has been losing the public relations game.
Yeah.
And they will be the first one to admit that to you. And they, but I've seen a change. I've seen a radical change. I'm seeing now when Israel is falsely accused of something, now Israel's got the proof to back it up. Does it always change everybody's minds? No, because anti-Semitism doesn't care about the facts.
Sure.
But I'll give you an example. When the Al Arabiya hospital in North Gaza was hit last week, and guys, I clipped the headlines, and even CNN came out and said, Israel attacks Al Arabiya hospital. And I'm thinking, gee, that's a pretty good conclusion to make since you don't have all the facts yet. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You're CNN. That's what you do.
Right.
But I'm looking at this, but Israel was ready. Israel said, look, we've been intercepting calls from Hamas operatives now for years. So they had the call between the two Hamas operatives who said it was Islamic Jihad. Then they took video of the track of the rocket. Right. And then an independent study was done saying, wait a minute. This is not Israeli shrapnel from this rocket.
Right.
It's from our team.
Our own.
And all of that comes out. And then all of a sudden, the networks either backtracked or they pulled this all-important story from their websites. And all of a sudden, you can't see it on there anymore.
So, yeah, I don't know if it was Wall Street Journal or CNN. I'm sure they all did it. But someone had recorded, they changed that headline for that story 9 times in 24 hours.
Wow.
9 times in 24 hours. So you can see that the American newspapers are all pushing a certain narrative. They want to. They had published some papers about Israel's cutting off water supply to the civilians in there. If you guys look at the statistics, Israel supplies less than 10% of the water supply to Gaza anyway. Gaza gets most of their water supply from the coastal aquifers and ground wells.
Yep.
So it's a super small amount, and they're like, oh, Israel's trying to kill all the civilians there.
Yeah, guys, this is all deception. And about a half an hour before our podcast, I was actually on Facebook, and I saw a comment from someone because there's something up on Facebook, and it touches my heart and almost brings tears to my heart. And it touches my heart in a way where it says, children in Gaza have no water to bathe. In Gaza, there's no water to bathe children. And then there's a space, and it says, yeah, but in Israel, in Kibbutz Be'eri, there are no children to bathe. That's powerful stuff.
That is powerful.
Yeah.
And in the midst of this, I see somebody commenting, well, what about all of the children in Gaza now who are dying, because of the Israeli attacks? I'm like, here we go again. Time out.
Yeah.
Time out. And finally, Israel is coming out in full force, basically saying, what part of Hamas saying we use human shields do you not get?
Right. Hiding behind our children.
I mean, come on.
Hiding under our hospitals.
Look. And it's not like Hamas is trying to make it a secret. It's not like they're saying, okay, listen, we use children as human shields. Shh, don't let the word get out because then we'll be the bad guys. They don't care, and they're still not the bad guys.
They seem to be publishing everything they're doing.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And you have to wonder why it's working in their favor. Why, for example, when Hamas spokesmen, 2 of them, Sami Abu Zuri and Fatih Hamad, the former public relations leader of Hamas, but you're never former, you're still active. When they say, look, we want to let you know something. We know that Israeli warplanes have been dropping leaflets to get you to leave.
Right.
Ignore the leaflets.
Really?
Stay in your homes. And when you're in your homes, unbutton your shirt, men, and open up your chest so that you can stand there as the bomb comes, because we need to sacrifice ourselves to fight the enemy. This is why they say, I'm quoting Hamas. Mm-hmm. This is why we use our people, especially women and children, as human shields. We delight in doing this. It makes us martyrs. Allah is proud. We look forward to it. And just, when was it? Yesterday, there was in the south part of Gaza, because Israel basically said to Palestinians in North Gaza, listen, here are the leaflets, you're in North Gaza, get out, we're going to attack. Mm-hmm. Israel attacks North Gaza. Why are civilians getting killed? Because when they go out on the streets, Hamas sees them and basically says, you see this AK-47? You don't get back in your house and it's going in your body. Mm-hmm. So you got one of two choices. Get back in your house or it's going in your body. And whatever choice they make, Israel still loses. Because if they go back in their house, they get blown up. Right. Israel gets blamed. But if they don't, then they get a bullet in their body. They die. And then the next day, Hamas does what's called the CNN strategy. They parade the bodies out and they're crying. They say, look what Israel's done. And the whole world is stupid enough to believe it. And it's got to stop. It's ridiculous already.
Yeah, they're focused on violence, not on politics, not on it's not bureaucracy, is it?
It's
yeah, none of it.
No.
And so you see with the money they got for pipelines, they show them cutting up those pipes and turning them into rockets. Yeah. The pipelines for water and for oil and everything like that. But yeah, they parade it. The Israeli Defense Force posted on their YouTube channel last week a very vivid video of the Hamas group coming over the border and coming into the streets and spraying people down. Yeah. They did not blur it out. None of it was censored. They got over the wall and they started shooting people in their cars. And people were falling down on the ground, blood everywhere. And they're like, on to the next civilian.
Yeah.
They're just violence.
And they're liars because, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but today, and it may have been today, it may not, it might have been the yesterday or the day before, BBC television was doing an interview with a Hamas leader.
I saw this, yeah.
Yeah, and he basically said, we do not target civilians. And like, okay, so wait a minute. So hold on, I'm sorry, time out. So when you guys went and you saw Kfar Aza and Kfar Ba'eri, these kibbutzim, which you know are basically, very, very gentle people, families with children, plus it's Shabbat. And it's 6:30 in the morning and they're all asleep. You know darn well the IDF was not there. You know these are civilians and you target them anyway. So don't give me that nonsense. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and he, as soon as they confronted with that, he just took his microphone off, threw it on the floor, and walked out.
I do not want to do this interview anymore. Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not.
So this video, it's not from the current conflict, but I think it really accurately sums up why there's so much civilian death going on. It's a video of, I think it's from 2017, I want to say, of a father sending his young boy, couldn't have been more than 3 or 4. And he's sending him off to some IDF soldiers and saying, let them shoot you, die for Allah, go. And then like the little boy goes up, like walks up to them and he's like, the man's telling them, hit them. And the kid kind of like playfully hits them. And then the IDF soldier shakes the little boy's hand. Yep. And then the father says stuff like, see those rocks, pick them up and throw them at him. And the boy's acting like it's a game. But the whole time the father is shouting, die for Allah, die, let him shoot you, don't be scared.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, that doesn't get a lot of airtime, does it?
No, it doesn't. You know what else doesn't get a lot of airtime? And I think you're spot on. I think it was in 2017. And it may have been around the same time that the Palestinians showed a photo. They said, this is a photo of a little girl named Malek. And she is 8 years old. Beautiful, beautiful child. But she is dead. And she is dead because the Israelis came and shot her dead. And a beautiful little girl. What does it do? It tugs on your heartstrings.
Right.
Do you want maybe to hear the Israeli side of the story? No, because you're already taken in, because your heart is already there. Okay. Now, come to find out that when the photo made its way and a woman in Moscow was looking at the photo, she said, how the heck did they get a photo of my 8-year-old daughter? Yeah. On the day that this Palestinian girl, supposedly Palestinian girl, was killed. So the mother goes to the news networks and she basically says, first of all, this girl's name is not Malek. This is my daughter. She has a separate name. And on the day that the Palestinians said that Israel killed her, she and I were at the Moscow Zoo and she's still alive. She's doing fine.
Wow.
Did the newspapers and the CNNs and the MSNBCs retract the story and say, hey, we screwed up? God forbid. Let's give Hamas the edge and fool the world.
So much deception going on.
Of course. Of course.
Well, so Jack, for those who don't know, how would you quantify Hamas? What is Hamas?
You bet. In the mid-1980s, there was a group in Egypt called the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood started out as a group that, on the one hand, went against the regime of Egypt because they thought that the president and many of the cabinet officials were starting to be too open. And they were ultra conservative. The Muslim Brotherhood was. Hamas began as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay.
Fast forward now to 2005. Hamas is in the Gaza Strip. Hamas holds elections to rule the government, and they win.
Huh.
A terrorist group gets elected. So, guys, listen, everybody listening, the next time you think that we have it, our government is bad here, I mean, at least they're not out killing anybody yet. But so 2005,
children in the womb, yeah.
Right, 2006, Hamas wins the elections. Might have had something to do with the fact that they killed all their opponents. That always works. Right. And since 2006, they haven't held any other elections. This is important because when the Gaza Health Ministry says Israel bombed the hospital, it must be true because it's the health ministry. First of all, it's not a health ministry. And another name for the Gaza Health Ministry is Hamas. Guys, they're the government.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
they're both military and political.
Oh, you bet.
So that's all bundled in one,
It's
which
all
governments
bundled.
are. But of course, but now aren't these the Sunnis? Aren't they Sunni Islamists?
Sunni Islamists tend to be the violent Islamists. And yes, they believe in a very extreme form of Islam, which includes the eradication of Jewish people wherever. Now listen to this part, wherever they are. And Fatih Hamad has said this from Hamas. Hezbollah's leader, Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, also says it. He echoes it every time he makes a message. It's, I'm coming up to speak. I'm like, shut up. We know what you're going to say. You say the same thing every time. And he says, kill the Jews wherever you find them.
Which is what the Quran says, yeah.
Right. But even aside from that, let's put the Quran aside, just for semantics here. So kill the Jews wherever you find them, on the one hand. On the other hand, we're doing this to you because it's occupation. Okay, but kill the Jews wherever they are. So in other words, if Jews are, let's say, in Australia, kill the Jews there too. But listen, it's all about occupation.
Right.
Okay, how can Australia occupy the Gaza Strip? They're 10,000 miles away from each other. This is so stupid.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Yeah, that's why the U.S. government and military, we have checks and balances on the branches that control those things. Like you were talking about with the health ministry, it's just the Hamas government, and they eliminated their enemies or their opponents in the election. That's why our government has checks and balances. Gaza, with them just being able to establish their land there with what Israel has given them, they haven't been able to set up something like that. And with Hamas and the violence that has been happening there, they haven't had the ability to.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely right.
Something interesting that I just thought about is the difference between Christian martyrdom and Muslim martyrdom. Very big difference. And what's the difference? Because some people might be like, oh, religious freedom, right? Religious freedom. No, the Muslim doctrine is we go out and kill and get killed and go to heaven, right? Christianity doesn't say go and get killed and kill, right? It's preach the gospel to all the nations. But we even see in the New Testament where the apostles were persecuted, they left those nations. And we're told to persevere through persecution, not to chase after it.
Right, not to seek it, pursue it. That's their only, one of the things we brought up in our podcast is how do you take someone who looks down the barrel of a gun and sees paradise? How do you fight that person? Because you're giving them by jihad what they want, the assurance of heaven. Whereas a Christian on the other side of that can see someone pointing a gun at them and realize that because Christ holds them, they are secure. You kill me, I go to paradise.
I can answer that question for you. Obviously, there are always going to be people that you're never going to reach.
Yeah.
But some years ago, there was a radio show here in Phoenix. I think the host was Pat McMahon. I don't know. But he used to have a show here in Phoenix, a radio show called The God Show. And on The God Show, what he would do is he would have different speakers come on and speak about different things. And this was also at a time when there was tension between Israel and Arabs or Palestinians. So Pat McMahon gives me a call and he says, hey, would you come to the studio and be a guest on the show and give your position? I'm like, yeah, Pat, hey, great. And that's what he told me. What he didn't tell me was that there would be another guest on the show.
Oh, wow.
A Muslim.
Really?
Right. And so I walk into the studio, la-di-da, I'm like, this is great, man. I'm going to tell her we're going to get the word out. And I walk into, the waiting room of the studio, and I see a gentleman sitting there, and he looks, very, very Arabic, and we start to get into a conversation. And I said, hi, my name is Jack. He said, my name is Noor. I said, Noor, nice to meet you. I said, what are you doing here? He said, I am here for a radio show. I said, isn't that a coincidence? I'm here for a radio show, too. I said, what radio show are you? Pat McMahon. I said, I'm on Pat McMahon. And we got to talking, and we realized that we were on opposite ends of the spectrum. And I said, Noor, I said, tell me a little bit about yourself. And he did. And he said, well, my family came over from Pakistan, and we tried to make ends meet. And I started working as a truck driver, and it was very, very difficult. He said, but I'm not working now. I said, why? He said, because I have stage 4 cancer. He said, I don't have long to live. He said, I don't know what I'm going to do. My wife, my children, I don't want to leave them. And I'm listening to this. And I said, can I pray for you? He said, would you? I said, really? Yes. And so here you have it, guys, in a radio studio before a radio show starts. A Jew and a Muslim sitting together, and I got my hand on his shoulder, and I'm praying, and I'm meaning it.
Yeah.
I'm meaning it. And he said, thank you so much. No one has ever prayed for me before.
Wow.
I said, Noor, not only am I going to pray for you now, but I'm going to keep praying for you. And I said, let's exchange phone numbers and let's get together from time to time. And we did.
Wow.
We formed a relationship. P.S., we're called into the studio. Okay. And Pat McMahon, because, radio broadcasters, they love to stir things up.
Yes, it's fight night.
Yeah, it's fight night. And he says, okay, so let's hear both of you and give your position. And, you can almost hear the boxing bells start. And the two of us, all of a sudden, rather than attacking each other, me and Noor are, start off the show by saying, well, Mr. McMahon, we have a friendship. He prayed for me. And we are friends. And you could just see the look on Pat McMahon's face. Okay, let's cut to a commercial. He didn't know what to do. Wow. He didn't know what to do. But, Noor and I, we went out for a couple of times. And when I found out, and it still brings tears to my eyes, that he passed on, it hurt me so much in here because I developed such a love for this man. And he developed such a love for me as well. And that is what we should be looking for and seeking for today, not going out and holding a supposed pro-Palestinian protest. Oh, garbage. Garbage. Look, let's talk real, because we've been seeing these. They had one at ASU. They tried to have one at U of A until the president said, yeah, I don't think so. And then they said, well, okay, we won't hold one because we're frightened. Frightened of what? A statement from a college president? Really? Wait until Halloween comes.
Yeah. Right.
But when these Palestinian we are pro-Palestinian. No, you're not. No, you're not. Because if you really cared about those Palestinian civilians, you wouldn't be out holding a sign saying to the news networks, look at me, aren't I great? I got an ego boost. You would be collecting money and finding out a way to get it to the Red Cross over there in the Gaza Strip to help those people that you supposedly so care about.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's call this what it is.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that's BS.
Yeah.
I'm pro-Palestinian. No, you're not. Yeah. You're pro-Hamas and you're anti-Semitic. Why don't you just call it what it is? Hey, we're coming out and having a rally because we hate Jewish people. Yeah, look, you want to have the rally? Just be honest enough to admit who you are. Don't couch it in pro-Palestinian because, no, you're not that either.
Right.
We've moved on from this ever so slightly, but I think one thing that I found really profound when I was starting to learn church history and things is, as opposed to what a lot of people think of as martyrdom, early Christian leaders went so far as to say that lion that's eating you, don't you dare pull its ears. Don't you dare punch it. You let that lion eat you.
Yeah.
I think, I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was Athanasius that was really big on that. Could be wrong on who exactly it was, but it was very much you don't fight, even when you're being executed, you don't try to break free from the execution. If you're thrown into the Colosseum with hungry animals, you don't fight them back. That's what martyrdom is. And I mean, I sometimes kind of wrestle with whether or not that's 100% the way we should understand it. Sure. I think a lot of that sentiment is very important and is very reflective in like the difference in how martyrdom is viewed in the two religions. Is one of them is it's more, where I'm fighting is on I refuse to do what you've asked me to do. I will not change my faith. If that means I die, so be it.
Right.
But it doesn't mean I'm going to go, attack you, and if you fight back, then now I'm a martyr. It's the martyr is very specifically the person saying, no, I will not fight, but I will not convert. I will not deny my faith. I will not do all these things you're demanding of me, but I'm not going to do anything to you either. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to stand here as an example of what that's supposed to look like. Yeah. And if that means I die, okay.
Yeah. It's true. It's a great point that you brought up. And the question is, where along that line, how do we make the decision? How do we make the determination? Right. Because, on the one hand, we've got Jesus saying, and it's often, guys, we know that this verse is misinterpreted. Mm-hmm. Somebody slaps your right cheek, give them the left also.
That's not,
and it doesn't mean to be a punching bag.
Right.
But at the same time, let's also keep in mind that Jesus was not only the one who overturned the tables of the money changers, but in Revelation, the supposedly only always passive and nonviolent Jesus. Hello, newsflash, he's coming back with a sword in his mouth and he's going to kill everybody.
That mean Old Testament God, nice New Testament God thing, if it were true at all, it would be backwards.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you have other things in the New Testament, like, take the sword when Jesus on that last night, grab the sword, strap it on, that's enough. Yep. There was a self-defense in there. And of course, the slap on the cheek being an insult, not a personal attack. But even in Romans 13, having and we talked about this on one of the episodes of the podcast, that the authorities that are established by God, whether it's local, national, or whatever, responsible to punish the evildoer and suppress the evil. So Israel's right to defend itself, as well as the allies of Israel to come alongside and say, we are going to put down the terrorists. We are going to bring about a peaceful solution, but the peaceful solution will be by punishing and removing the evildoer. There's a consequence for evil that God has established authorities to quell that. I think the persecution question is necessary. I'm glad you raised that, because you look at like Matthew 10. Jesus says, if they persecute you, verse 23, flee. So we're mandated by Jesus to flee. Now, if you can't get away, what are you going to do?
Defend yourself.
You're going to stand firm. You're going to defend yourself. If they take your life, they take your life. Yeah. And Jesus even promised that was the normal, natural experience of a follower of him. That if they hated me, they're going to hate you. So gear up for this. But so we recognize Israel's legitimacy to defend itself. We recognize that the nation of Israel, or even the Jewish people. I mean, one of the arguments, I remember saying this when you and I were together in Israel, one of the greatest arguments for the truthfulness of the Bible is Israel. Every promise that God has made is intact. What God has done to preserve his people, what man has done to eliminate these people, or what Satan, we should say, has done, and even in the book of Revelation, will try again to do, will ultimately be thwarted by God. Take us maybe, Jack, into this conversation, and we'll land the plane here. We are dealing with a group of people who are, from America's standpoint, an ally. They're an ally to us. We understand Genesis 12, bless those, I'll bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. There is a sense in which right now Scripture says there's a partial hardening happening to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in. Mm-hmm. There is a veil, 2 Corinthians 4, over those eyes who haven't had the veil lifted in Jesus. There's even organizations, and we ought to be careful in discerning who we give to, because there's some organizations that we give to that would actually keep the Jewish people from coming to a true saving knowledge of God and the gospel through his son, the Lord Jesus Christ. Maybe speak to the situation spiritually. How can we use this conversation about what's happening geopolitically to point people to their need for the rescuing power of the gospel?
What a great question. And let me point back to one of the scripture verses you mentioned, which is actually Romans 11:25 and 26. Talking about, obviously, Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in, and so Israel shall be saved, and the Redeemer shall come forth from Zion. Some of the most complicated verses in Scripture until you take them in reverse.
That's right.
Then they become ridiculously easy. So last part, the Redeemer will come forth from Zion. Yay, Jesus is coming back.
Right.
Okay, so what has to happen before that? All of Israel has to be saved. Man, don't worry about it. Listen. It's not talking about every single last Jew.
Right.
Because then you get into this wacko hyper dispensational theology where you've supposedly got God up there with a counter saying, okay, wait, the Jews want to come in. Hold on. We got to get the Gentiles first. Any more Gentiles?
I've noticed, it seems like a lot of non-Messianic Jews think that that's like the standard position.
Yeah.
Basically, like what I've noticed is in the way they see things, there's the Roman Catholics and there's super ultra hyper dispensationalists who are clinging to their Darby charts every night still.
Thank you.
And there's no one else.
Right. And part of it comes from an improper rendering of the original Greek of Romans 11:25, where some of the translation will say, all Israel will be saved. But, first the full number of the Gentiles has to come in, which is totally wrong because look, the Greek word arithmos is not in there. But it supposedly says, okay, so here's what's going to happen. Before God lets the Jews in, we got to get every last Gentile. So you can, like they're envisioning God up there with a counter. Okay, any more Gentiles? Oh, okay, couple more. Okay, any more Gentiles? Okay, oh, Mr. Fieri, come on in. Okay, yep. Mr. O'Malley, come on. Any more Gentiles? Gentiles are good? No more? Okay. Irving, Sheldon, Murray, Leo, your turn. And it's not full number, it's fullness. So let's go back again. Jesus is coming back. It'll be after all Israel gets saved. Every single last Jew? No. But a massive tidal wave of Jewish people like you've never seen before, like maybe the times like that we're living in now. Because since Israel became a state in 1948, more Jewish people have come to Jesus than at any other time since the first century book of Acts. Mm-hmm. And why is that happening? It's because Gentiles are coming into their fullness. What does it mean? It means when greater numbers of churches say, hey, in our missions outreach, as we're going to Guatemala, as we're going to Cambodia, as we're going to Ecuador, let's make sure we also reach Jewish people as well, because Paul said first to the Jew, and for many churches, they're not even on the radar screen at all.
Right.
And so you're seeing that plan take place and come to fruition. And Justin, I'm so glad you brought out that not every organization that purports to be part of that is actually part of that. And because this is a wonderful podcast and we don't want to get sued, I won't mention the organization and a particular organization that it is. But there are organizations out there that use terms like Jewish and Christian in the same breath. Mm-hmm. And that's as far as I'm going to go. Say, wow, okay, they're helping Jews and Christians. This is great. Everybody in a happy family. And we're going to give to that organization so that those Jewish people are going to hear the gospel. Well, you better give to another organization because it's not through them. And they admit that it's not through them. You could read a book that their founder, who's now deceased, wrote in 1985. And he basically says, hey, look, we're Jewish. We don't believe in Jesus and we never will. Mm-hmm. But here are some organizations, and this will give me an opportunity to talk, guys, a little bit about Jewish Voice Ministries. Mm-hmm. I've been serving now as a staff evangelist for Jewish Voice Ministries International now for more than 19 years. And this is a ministry that says, look, more than anything else, our directive is to make sure that the whole world gets saved, but first, the Jewish people. Why? Because they're any better than anybody else? No. But because in the Greek word is proton here, because in priority, the gospel had to go to them first. Why did Paul go to the Jewish people first? Because if he went to the Gentiles first, by the time he got to the Jews, they wouldn't listen to him.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So the directive is to the Jew first. And so one of the things that we've been doing as it applies geopolitically to Israel today is we've got 85 partner organizations right there on the ground, hearing the bombs and rockets fly over in Israel, saying, listen, we need funds to do this. Number one, supply food, supply clothing, supply housing, supply necessary materials, not only to IDF soldiers in battle, but how about those people who are living in places like, Sderot, which gets hit by rockets like, every 5 minutes, who no longer have their homes, who have lost loved ones, who have nothing. They need support right now. And so we are giving to those partner organizations from donations and gifts we receive from partners in order to help out and bless Israel. And we know that the money is going to the right place because each and every one of those organizations promotes the gospel. The way to do it, easy, jewishvoice.org/Israel. Boom. Go there, make a donation, help the people.
Would you help us think through, maybe to wrap this up here, Jack? This has been so incredibly helpful. I mean, it just, it makes everything come alive and is super clear.
Praise the Lord.
Would you help us know, how do we offer kindness, compassion to our Jewish friends here? Number one, in light of what's happening and tragic as this. Number two, how would you speak to, as a Jew who has found your Savior and Messiah? I'm the Gentile, the wild olive branch grafted in, What would you tell someone like me and us about how to lovingly present the gospel in light of the events that are happening right now to a Jewish man, woman, boy, or girl?
Sure. And that's the second question. Let me answer the first question first. The first question is, how can we as Christians get the word out and reach these Jewish people, at least in a different way? We'll talk about witnessing in a second.
Just compassion.
Yeah. Here's what I would love to see. What I would love to see, and I'm surprised there's not more of it. What I would love to see are more churches saying, hey, we recognize that Jewish people need Jesus too. We know that they're hurting. Instead of us pushing trunk or treat like it's the biggest thing that we got to push now because we don't have anything else on the calendar except our midweek men's group. How about church? You guys have a special service to celebrate and to honor Israel. And you use the quote from Isaiah 40, comfort, oh, comfort my people. And you have a special church service saying, listen, to the Jewish people in our community, we know you're hurting. We love you. And what we want to do is we want to have a special service where we're simply going to be there to comfort you. And at the service on that night, we're going to ask the people from our church, we're going to receive a love offering, and we're going to send that to Israel. Why am I not hearing this? Why are churches not doing this?
Yeah, so that actually brings up a question. Because I've one of the things I've been doing lately is both in prep for this, but also just to kind of learn how I can help. Is there's a couple like Jewish communities on Reddit that I've been kind of like reading and interacting with them, asking questions and stuff.
Yep.
And what I've noticed is that they view pretty much anything where we as Christians would use the Old Testament, or where we would try to explain like how we see the Bible, or try to get them to see the prophets we're talking about Jesus, they see, in light of the Holocaust, they see that as an attempt at cultural genocide.
Sure.
And it just completely seems to dead end anything we can do, because at least before I would have thought something like what you just, that's perfect. But now I'm thinking maybe it's just because I'm on the internet, which could totally be skewing things here. But
No.
it seems Reddit. But from what I'm seeing on the internet, Reddit of all places, what I'm seeing is that what a lot of Jews would see is there's the Christians trying to replace us again.
Yeah, so you know what? Do the Sandra Zimmerman method. That's my wife. And I want to share with you how I got to this place. But what she did, Sandy and I now this coming January, my gosh, we'll be married 36 years. And we met and married in 3 months. And she's Christian, so I knew she had an agenda. And her agenda was that she was going to get this Jewish boy to embrace Christ as his Savior. And I said, okay, that's fine. That's cool, because I got an agenda too. And my agenda back then was I was going to get this wayward Christian girl to forget all about this ridiculous Jesus nonsense and convert and become Jewish like me. And by the fact, obviously, that I'm a pastor and evangelist today, guess whose agenda won?
Yeah.
But what happened was, early on, she opened up the Bible to me and she said, look, I want to read to you a verse in this Bible that talks about who your promised Messiah is. I said, fine, you can read anything you want, but start in Genesis, just don't go past Malachi and we'll be fine. Because that's my book. Malachi, as you finish Malachi, good. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. Because I don't want to hear about this Jesus stuff. And she said, okay, fine. And she started to read, and here's what she read. For he grew up before him like a tender plant, like a root, like a shoot out of dry ground. And he had no beauty to attract us to him. Yet he was despised and rejected by men, for he was pierced for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace is upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. And she put the Bible down. I still didn't see what she was reading from, and it was great, the facial expression, even though you can't see it on the podcast if you're listening. But trust me, it was like, so? And I said, so you didn't listen to me at all. You said you would stay in my Jewish Bible. Obviously you didn't. You're talking about this Jesus. And she turned the Bible around and she said, Jack, I just read to you the first 5 verses of the 53rd chapter of the book of Isaiah. And she went, Isaiah, isn't he on your team?
Wow.
And that way it wasn't forced.
Yeah.
It was just she asking a question saying, hey, can I read you a verse from your Jewish Bible? And that's what other great ministries, like one we were talking about before the podcast, does. There's a guy who goes around the streets of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and I love him because he starts talking to Jewish people saying, hey, what would you think of someone who healed the sick and did this and this? And they are great. They are righteous. They should be the Messiah. And then he says, well, let me tell you who it's pointing to. Mm-hmm. And their jaw drops to the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it seems like it's a lot about it is just being careful on the approach, it seems. Because I've noticed that even coming in there, usually when I comment on something, they have their little flares you can put. So I'll put that I'm a Christian so everyone's aware.
Right.
And then I'll say stuff like, hey, I'm not going to get into my beliefs on this thing, but but I'll try to touch on my perspective on it a little bit and see if they'll push back on it at all.
Yeah.
But very much so I'm not, I've almost had to almost word for word say things like, I'm not trying to convert you here. I just want your perspective because this is how I see it. And then it kind of seems to get them thinking a bit and respond.
Exactly, because, and it totally agrees with Romans, where Paul said a person needs to be convinced about something in their own mind, their mind, not yours.
Yeah.
I love what your wife did. She just spoke the word of God and let the holy and living, active book change your heart. Yeah. I love that. That's awesome.
The other really simple thing, and thankfully this isn't a difficult thing to do with anybody, but the other thing I've noticed that I've kind of had to do almost immediately in every conversation I've had, even if it's not about talking about the differences in our faiths and stuff, I pretty much immediately have to be yep, I know Christians were really bad to you guys in the past. Anyways, you've got to acknowledge it. You can't have the conversation until you say something about it. And in my experience, it seems like people aren't holding a grudge about it. But until you say yeah, no, that was uncalled for, they don't want to hear you. But when you say that, then they seem to instantly okay, we can go now.
And you're right. And sometimes it's tough to reach the older people.
Oh, yeah. In particular, I'd imagine that's probably bigger with them.
It is. But there's a way to get around that as well. Mm-hmm. There's a way to get around that as well, because the older people, it was you Christians who persecuted us and who came, in the Holocaust. And I actually had an Israeli woman say that to me. And I said, you live in Israel? She said, yes. I said, okay, so you've never been to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum? She said, yes, I have. I said, okay, so tell me about the garden of the righteous Gentiles or the righteous Christians. Mm-hmm. I said, why are they righteous? Said, you're telling me that Christians killed the Jews. That doesn't sound righteous to me. You got Yad Vashem right across the street. They say the Gentiles are righteous. Something's not clicking here. You want to explain this? And there's, well, these were the Christians who helped Israel. I said, okay, but why do you label then the ones who came against Israel, who came against us, who were bad, are Christians? How can they be both? They're diametrically opposed to one another. That gets people thinking.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Jack, we are very appreciative to have you on this podcast. Just answer these deep but very important questions. And listeners, we hope this is not only an encourage to you, but also a challenge to research, to prepare for what's to come, and to get the gospel out to the Jews, to the Gentiles, to the Muslims as well, to everyone around you. We thank you very much for listening to this episode of the It Stands Written podcast. We will see you on the next episode.